Guys, can you believe Formula One is already back? That's right, round two is not but a week later as F1 heads to China to race around the Shanghai International Circuit. We are here to make our predictions for what's going to happen. So let's go ahead, let's jump on into this thing, get this video underway. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you enjoyed Australia because boy oh boy was it wild from start to finish. I think my recap video ended up being about 25 minutes long, but realistically I think I could have rambled on for dang near an hour at the end of that one because there was just so many plot lines, so many stories to tell, and so many things that we saw over the course of the weekend that I think I could have filled an hour if I had, the energy after staying up all night watching that race. But guys, that is not what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about the Chinese Grand Prix here in 2025, the first sprint race weekend on the calendar, which means the first introduction of our our final prediction that will be included in these videos, which is our sprint winner. That will come after our qualifying prediction, so keep an eye out for that. As always, before we jump into this thing, if you haven't already, subscribe down below, join this little community. We would love to have you. We are trying to build a little community here to talk about not only sim racing, but Formula One as a whole. But guys, we are going to be making our predictions for our biggest positive surprise, our biggest disappointment, our Grand Prix qualifying top three, our sprint winner, like I mentioned, our race podium, which is of course our Grand Prix race on Sunday, and then we'll wrap things up with our one crazy prediction. But first things, let's jump into this thing and get on with our biggest positive surprise. Let's kick things off with a positive note with our biggest positive surprise. And this week, I have gone for a rookie who I think deserves a lot more than what he got here in Australia, and that is Isaac Hadjar. I think all of us collectively as a human race rallied around Isaac and were devastated to see his reaction to unfortunately just making a small mistake on the formation lap and DNFing from the Australian Grand Prix before it even began. You saw how distraught he was standing outside the catch fence where he DNF'd, and you saw obviously F1's wild decision to basically broadcast 5 uninterrupted minutes of him making his way back into the paddock, where he was thankfully consoled by Anthony Hamilton, Lewis Hamilton's father. And I think that must be an amazing feeling for him looking back on it. I'm sure in the moment he probably couldn't quite grasp just how nice that was of him, but I'm sure it'll be something he'll remember for his entire career. I think it really warmed everyone's hearts, and I think we are all hoping to see him bounce back as he was showing a lot of pace in Australia. He almost made it into Q3, I believe, qualifying P11 in the end, with obviously Yuki making it into Q3. The car definitely looks like it's actually performing pretty decently, so I'm excited to see what he can do with a full dry weekend ahead of him. I know it's going to be a sprint race weekend, but I think with the sprint race under his belt by the time they get to the Grand Prix on Sunday, I'm hoping he'll have the confidence to really make some moves as we head towards the full Grand Prix on Sunday. So guys, let's all rally around him. I know you'll be joining me on this journey. My biggest positive surprise is Isaac Hadjar. Now, before we jump into our pick for biggest disappointment this weekend, I will remind you that if you're interested in joining our community's prediction championship, you can head to the link down below and join our Discord. There's an F1 weekend prediction channel there, and you can drop your predictions for these exact same things that we're predicting here down there. And then at the end of the Grand Prix weekend, we'll tally up all the points and we'll see who comes out on top after 24 race weekends is all said and done. It's never too late to jump in. We would love to have you join. And if you're interested, you can have your predictions shown in this video as you'll have seen in the previous prediction along the bottom of the screen with a black bar and your predictions as if you can get them in before Wednesday when the video goes live. So if you're interested in that, head to the link down below, join the Discord, let's have some fun. But let's go ahead, let's move on forward to our pick for biggest disappointment. And I hate to do this because when I was thinking about it, it just seems to make the most sense, mainly because I think Australia was so interesting from a logistics perspective and a weather perspective and just a personnel perspective when all the dust settled. My pick for this weekend for biggest disappointment is unfortunately Alex Albon. And I hate to do this because I really do, because I was so happy for Alex to finish at the time P4. Obviously Kimi's penalty was overturned and he returned to P4. So Alex, even still finishing P5, is an amazing result for the first round of the year. Obviously Alex had a lot of doubters coming into the season with Williams' addition of Carlos Carlos Sainz. I think a lot of people were expecting Carlos to come in and basically mop the floor with him from what I was seeing online. To see him come in, have Carlos DNF not only, but to see him come in and put a top 5 on the cards in Australia, I think it was an amazing performance, and I don't want this to take away from that at all. But at the same time, we have seen Alex do some very impressive things in Australia that may not have translated further into the season or around the races around it. And so unfortunately, I think we might see a bit of a regression to the mean for Alex this weekend. And I'm sure he'll still perform very well, but I think it might be a little underwhelming based on the result we saw in round 1. So unfortunately, and it pains me again to say it, Alex Albon, you are my pick for biggest disappointment this weekend. Let's go ahead and jump on into our qualifying top 3 prediction. This is the qualifying for the Grand Prix on Sunday, and let's kick things off with my pick for P3 in qualifying. And I'm sticking with a familiar face of Max Verstappen P3. I think this is definitely makes a lot of sense. I think Max has shown over the course of the Australian Grand Prix that he is getting the absolute maximum out of that car, and no matter what the performance levels are compared to every other car, you know Max is going to be getting 100 to 110% out of that car, and I think he's going to be motivated more than ever. You know, his streak of leading the World Championship, I think, was broken by 1,000 and something days. Finally, someone else leads the Drivers' Championship, and so I think we're going to see a motivated Max come out here in China and hopefully put a bit more pressure on the McLarens as they continue to move forward, not to spoil my predictions. But let's go ahead. We'll move on from Max here in P3, which I think is fully capable of. We'll be interested to see if the car can deliver that performance over a single lap, especially at a track like China, but time will tell. Let's go ahead. Let's move forward to P2, and I've gone with Oscar Piastri. I think the McLaren is just head and shoulders above the rest of the field. We saw it a lot in Australia. We saw it in the dry part of qualifying in Australia, where they put almost 4 full tenths on Max Verstappen. I almost thought George, but no, it was Max who qualified P3 in Australia. And so we saw just the gap between those cars and every other car on the grid. And so obviously with it being another dry qualifying, I think we're going to see another probably pretty clear, case of McLaren having a very well performing car once again. So I think we're going to see Oscar P2 on the grid for Sunday. And then lastly, my pole position, my P1 in qualifying is going to be Lando Norris. I think Oscar Piastri definitely has a lot of pace in him, but I think at least as of right now, Lando Norris just seems to be the better qualifier, just being a little more steady and getting the performance out of the car over that single lap. Now, we have seen great strides in Oscar's race performance, but I think over a single lap, while he is close, and I think will definitely have his moments if he's able to really hook up a single lap. But I think in this instance, I think Lando's going to carry that momentum from his win in Australia forward to another pole position for this weekend's Chinese Grand Prix. So there we have it, guys. A Max Verstappen P3, an Oscar Piastri P2, and a Lando Norris pole position. All right, for the first time in 2025, we're making a prediction for sprint winner. And I'm not even going to beat around the bush because I don't think there's really a whole lot to say about this. I think the winner of the sprint race this weekend is going to be Oscar Piastri, with the sprint race being basically the first full-bore competitive session of the weekend. I think we're going to see Oscar kind of similar to how Lando's trying to carry momentum. I think Oscar is trying to regain that momentum, where at points during the Australian Grand Prix, we saw Oscar actually outperforming Lando a little bit and actually having some pretty decent pace, basically riding Lando's gearbox for a lot of it before a small mistake forced him back a few seconds. And then obviously with the larger mistake with the slicks and the wet conditions, ultimately dropped him down basically to the back of the points paying positions when it was all said and done. So I think Oscar is going to come out shot out like a cannon this weekend, and I think he's going to want to assert himself as a true championship contender. And I think it all starts with a sprint race win on Saturday. What do you think? Let's move forward to our race podium. It's Sunday, or I guess it would be Saturday night if you want to get really technical, at least where I'm at. But we're going to be seeing a bunch of laps around China, and it's all going to culminate in 3 drivers standing ahead above the rest. Who is it going to be? Let's start with P3. I'm going with Max Verstappen in this one. I think for just some reason, I think it's going to be a broad case this season it's going to be Max Verstappen and the 2 McLarens. And I think that's going to be a case here this weekend, especially as other teams really try and get their head around their packages that they brought to the beginning of the season. We obviously saw situations like Ferrari that they really struggled to get their head around the car. And we saw teams who actually did very well to bring a good car like Williams and Racing Bulls. But I think at the front end of the grid, at least for the first couple of weekends, it's going to be Max Verstappen and the two McLarens. Not to spoil my podium prediction, but I think we'll see another instance where Max is going to be there or thereabouts, but just may not have the car performance to keep up with the two McLarens. Which will lead me straight into my prediction for P2 is Lando Norris. I think Lando and Max could potentially have a moment in this one, which might pull them a little further away from Oscar, who, like I mentioned in a sprint winner prediction, I think Oscar is going to want to come out with a vengeance this weekend, really put in a good performance and try and make the most of this car that he has. And I think he showed in Australia that if it's going to be dry and if he's going to be, in that groove, I think he's going to be just as quick or maybe even quicker than Lando Norris over a race distance, something we might not have seen in seasons past. Maybe it's just the Australia single round overreactions, but I think this could be a weekend that we could see some spice start to brew in the background in McLaren as they realize they have two #1 drivers, and I think that could come down to a very, very exciting battle for the championship as the season wears on. We'll see though, but I think it's going to be the case of Oscar Piastri getting the win this weekend in China, both the sprint race and the Grand Prix. I think if he comes out with a sprint race win, that's going to give him a lot of confidence going into the Grand Prix on Sunday. Obviously show his improved qualifying abilities that we saw last week. If he qualifies well, like I'm predicting him to, I think he could have the opportunity to finally put one over on Lando, get another win on the cards, especially with Max and Lando potentially having a bit of a battle themselves. We saw a little bit of this in Australia, where Max obviously got the much better start than Oscar, overtook him in the first couple laps and really challenged Lando. And will be interesting to see over the course of a race distance to see just how close he can actually keep it. And if he does, I think we could see some fireworks opening the door for Oscar Piastri to take the win. All right, guys, last prediction of the video. We have made it our one crazy prediction, and we are going extra crazy this weekend because my prediction for the Chinese Grand Prix, my crazy prediction, is that 3 rookies are going to be qualifying in the top 10 of the Chinese Grand Prix. I'm going to leave it at that. But at the same time, non-committally, I'm going to call my shot and say Isaac Hadjar, Liam Lawson, and Kimi Antonelli. Obviously, the latter two probably make the most sense, Liam being in the Red Bull and Kimi being in the Mercedes. Obviously, both of them really struggling in qualifying in Australia. I think that we'll see a bounce back performance. Obviously, we saw Liam really struggle to get up to speed with the Red Bull. I'm kind of hoping to see him kind of get it under him a little bit more going into China. I think the Red Bull does have enough performance that even Liam should be able to pull it into Q3. And I think now that Kimi has a qualifying under his belt as well, I think we're going to see him obviously kind of take a step forward and show that rapid pace that we saw over the Grand Prix distance, but over a single lap like Grand Prix on Sunday. So there we have it, guys. My one crazy prediction, 3 rookies on the top 10 of the grid for the Grand Prix on Sunday. And there we have it. My predictions for the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix. Guys, I hope you're excited for round 2 to be here already. It came so fast, the season started, and we're already on to the second weekend of the season. I, for one, can't wait to see it. I'm actually slightly excited for the sprint race this weekend. I think it's going to provide a very interesting wrinkle, especially given that there's still 6 rookies. There's still only going to be 1 practice session before you head into a competitive qualifying session, and it's going to make some exciting action. I think there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff at the front, potentially at the back. I, for one, can't wait to see it. But once again, guys, if you haven't already, subscribe down below. Leave a like on the video if you made it this far. It really helps me out with the algorithm. And what are your predictions? Let me know down in the comment section below. But guys, that is going to wrap it up for me here. We'll be back after the weekend is over to talk about what we saw. I hope you're excited, because I know I am. And I'll see you guys in the next one.